Have you ever fallen hard for someone, only to wake up one day wondering, what was I thinking? That magical spark fades, the flaws start showing, and suddenly, love doesn't feel so simple anymore. What if I told you this isn't just normal, it's necessary? Carl Jung, the groundbreaking psychologist who unlocked the secrets of the human psyche, discovered that love unfolds in 4 profound stages. And if you're a woman who's ever felt confused by love, understanding these stages could change everything. Carl Jung wasn't just a psychologist. He was a pioneer who explored the hidden forces shaping our desires, fears, and relationships. He believed love isn't just a feeling, it's a journey of self-discovery. When we fall for someone, we're not just seeing them, we're projecting our deepest longings, confronting our shadows, and ultimately growing into who we're meant to be. But most women never learn these stages, leaving them heartbroken or stuck in cycles of disappointment. Today, we're breaking down Jung's 4 stages of falling in love, not just to understand romance, but to master it. Because when you know how love truly works, you'll never see relationships the same way again. Stage 1. Projection. The first stage of falling in love, according to Jung, is where magic and illusion intertwine, where we don't just see a person, but a masterpiece painted by our own unconscious. This is the phase of projection where the boundaries between reality and fantasy blur, and the person we're drawn to becomes a canvas for our deepest desires. Jung called this phenomenon the anima and animus, the idealized feminine and masculine energies buried within us. For a man, the anima represents his inner feminine essence, the qualities he unconsciously admires, desires, or even lacks in himself. For a woman, the animus is her inner masculine ideal, the traits she's drawn to, often without fully understanding why. When we meet someone who even vaguely reflects these unconscious images, something extraordinary happens. We don't just like them, we feel an almost mystical pull, as if we've known them forever. This is why early love can feel so intoxicating. We aren't just falling for the person in front of us, we're falling for the version of them we've unconsciously crafted. Have you ever met someone and immediately thought they're perfect? Maybe they had a certain confidence, a warmth, or a way of speaking that made your heart race. But later, you realize they weren't exactly who you imagined. That's projection at work. We stitch together fragments of who they are with who we want them to be, filling in the blanks with traits we crave. This is why people often overlook red flags in the beginning, because the unconscious mind is so powerful, it can turn a few charming moments into a full-blown fantasy. A man might see a woman as endlessly nurturing because his anima longs for care. A woman might see a man as a heroic protector because her animus craves strength. But here's the catch: no human being can live up to an archetype. So why does this happen? Jung believed projection is the psyche's way of leading us toward growth. By projecting our ideals onto another, we're unconsciously seeking wholeness, trying to reclaim the disowned parts of ourselves through love. The problem isn't that we idealize, it's that we mistake the ideal for reality. This stage is temporary by design. Like a beautiful dream, it can't last forever, because eventually life demands we wake up. The quirks we ignored become irritations. The pedestal begins to crack. And that's not a bad thing. It's the necessary first step toward real love. Because true intimacy doesn't begin until the fantasy fades, and we're left with something far more interesting. A real person, flaws and all, and the choice to love them anyway. Stage 2. Disillusionment. The magic of the initial attraction inevitably gives way to something far less enchanting. The moment when the veil lifts, and you begin to see your partner not as an idealized figure, but as a real, flawed human being. This is the stage of disillusionment, where the projections that once painted your beloved in golden light start to dissolve, revealing the ordinary, and sometimes frustrating, truth beneath. Jung called this confrontation with reality a necessary collision with the shadow self, the hidden, often unconscious aspects of our personality that we reject or ignore, both in ourselves and in others. When the fantasy fades, what emerges are the traits we'd rather not see, the stubbornness, the insecurities, the habits that grate on our nerves. Suddenly, the person who once seemed perfect now leaves their socks on the floor, interrupts you when you speak, or withdraws when you need connection. The honeymoon phase is over, and reality sets in with a thud. This stage can feel like a betrayal, as if love itself has played a trick on you. You might wonder, did they change, or was I just blind to who they really are? But the truth is, neither of you has fundamentally changed. You're simply seeing each other more clearly. Arguments that never happened before now flare up over small things. The qualities you once found endearing, their spontaneity, for example, now strike you as irresponsibility. Their confidence begins to look like arrogance. This friction isn't a sign that love is failing. It's a sign that it's deepening. Jung believed that the shadow must be acknowledged and integrated for true growth to occur, both individually and within a relationship. The discomfort of disillusionment is actually an invitation to move beyond the superficial and into something more authentic. Why is this stage necessary? Because love cannot mature until it faces reality. The fantasy bond of the projection phase is like a beautiful cocoon, but real connection requires breaking out of it. Growth happens precisely when we are forced to confront what we've ignored, both in our partner and in ourselves. Often, the traits that irritate us most in others are the ones we unconsciously reject within ourselves. If their need for control triggers you, it might be because you've disowned your own rigidity. If their emotional outbursts unsettle you, it could be a reflection of your own suppressed emotions. Disillusionment, then, is not just about seeing your partner's flaws. It's about recognizing your own. So how do you navigate this turbulent phase without letting it destroy the relationship? The first step is self-reflection. Ask yourself, were my expectations realistic, or was I in love with an illusion? This isn't about blaming yourself for idealizing your partner. It's a natural part of falling in love, but about adjusting your vision to align with reality. The second step is communication, not avoidance. Many couples make the mistake of either suppressing their frustrations until they explode or distancing themselves emotionally to avoid conflict. But the middle path, honest, compassionate dialogue, is where real intimacy is built. Instead of accusing, "You're so selfish," try expressing your feelings and needs. "I feel unheard when you don't ask about my day." This shifts the dynamic from blame to collaboration. Disillusionment is painful, but it's also the gateway to a deeper, more resilient love. The couples who survive this stage aren't the ones who never argue. They're the ones who learn to argue well, who use conflict as a tool for understanding rather than a weapon for winning. They recognize that love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about learning to embrace imperfection, theirs and yours. And in doing so, they move beyond the fairy tale and into a love that's real. Stage 3. Differentiation. After the turbulence of disillusionment comes a quiet revolution. The stage where love transforms from something that happens to you into something you consciously choose. This is differentiation, the moment when two people step out of the fantasy of merged identities and begin relating as whole, separate individuals. Where projection once colored everything, now clarity emerges. You no longer expect your partner to complete you or fulfill every need, because you've started doing that work yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating our conscious and unconscious selves to become more fully who we are. In relationships, differentiation is where this inner work meets outer reality. You see your partner's flaws, limitations, and differences not as threats, but as invitations to grow. This stage is marked by a profound shift in perspective. Early love asks, "How do they make me feel?" Differentiated love asks, who are they really? Real-life examples abound. The wife who no longer bristles at her husband's need for solitude but understands it's how he recharges. The partner who stops taking their significant other's moods personally because they recognize them as separate emotional experiences. These couples have moved beyond the ego's demand for perfection and into the richer territory of acceptance. The chemistry may not burn as intensely as it once did, but in its place grows something more sustainable, a connection built on genuine knowledge rather than fantasy. What makes this stage the hallmark of true love is its intentionality. Infatuation is passive. We fall in love as if tripping into a ditch. But differentiated love is active. We stand in love by daily choice. This doesn't mean the feeling disappears. It means the feeling is no longer the sole dictator of the relationship's fate. Jungian analyst Robert Johnson famously wrote that we must sacrifice our ego's romantic expectations to reach this stage, to grieve the perfect partner we imagined and embrace the human one before us. This sacrificial act isn't about settling. It's about evolving our understanding of what love really is. Cultivating this stage requires 3 courageous practices. First, vulnerability, the willingness to show up as your imperfect self and extend that grace to your partner. Brené Brown's research confirms what Jung intuited. We can only connect deeply when we stop performing and start being seen. Second, acceptance, not passive tolerance, but active recognition that your partner is a separate person with their own inner world, history, and right to autonomy. Finally, emotional maturity, the ability to sit with discomfort without blaming, to self-regulate rather than demand your partner regulate you. Couples who reach this stage often describe a paradoxical experience. As they stop demanding their partner change, transformation naturally occurs. Space for growth opens where pressure once was. Arguments become less about winning and more about understanding. Intimacy deepens because it's no longer contingent on performance. This is where love stops being a noun, a static state we have, and becomes a verb, something we do day after day. And in that doing, we discover love's greatest secret. It wasn't about finding the right person all along, but about becoming the right partner. Stage 4. Transformation. At the apex of Jung's stages lies the most profound and often least understood phase, transformation. Here, love ceases to be merely about partnership and instead becomes a crucible for personal and spiritual evolution. Jung posited that intimate relationships serve as powerful mirrors, reflecting back not just who we are, but who we have the potential to become. This stage moves beyond the conventional notion of romantic love as a source of comfort or happiness, revealing it instead as a sacred path to psychological wholeness. Every argument, every moment of tension, every deep connection becomes an opportunity to confront aspects of ourselves we might otherwise avoid, our insecurities, our unmet childhood needs, our deepest fears of abandonment or engulfment. The transformative power of love manifests most clearly in how it compels us to face what Jung termed our shadow, those disowned parts of ourselves we've repressed or denied. Consider the woman who grew up with an emotionally distant parent and finds herself repeatedly drawn to aloof partners. At first, this pattern might seem like bad luck or poor judgment. But through Jung's lens, it reveals a deeper truth. She keeps recreating this dynamic because some unconscious part of her is trying to heal that childhood wound. The relationship isn't the problem. It's the solution her psyche has devised to work through unfinished business. Similarly, a man who bristles at his partner's need for independence might be confronting his own unacknowledged dependency needs. These uncomfortable moments aren't signs the relationship is failing. They're evidence it's working exactly as designed, to facilitate growth. Real-life examples of this transformation abound. There's the recovering people-pleaser who learns to set boundaries because her partner's authenticity inspires her to embrace her own truth. The workaholic who discovers through his relationship that vulnerability isn't weakness but the foundation of true connection. The commitment phobe who realizes her fear of intimacy stems from childhood trauma, and through a patient partner's love, finally allows herself to trust. These aren't just behavioral changes, they're psychological rebirths. The relationship becomes the container in which old wounds are healed and new possibilities are born. This stage reveals love's highest purpose, not just to make us happy, but to make us whole. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of integrating all aspects of the self, both light and dark, finds its most potent expression in intimate relationships. When two people commit to this level of growth together, something remarkable happens. The relationship becomes bigger than either individual, taking on almost mythic proportions. Partners no longer relate just as two separate people, but as fellow travelers on a shared journey of awakening. They understand that every conflict, every moment of tension, is an invitation to dive deeper into themselves, into each other, into the mystery of human connection. The ultimate goal of this stage isn't perfection, it's authenticity. Not a love free from conflict, but one where conflict serves evolution. Not a relationship without challenges, but one where challenges become opportunities. This is where we discover that true love isn't about finding someone perfect, but about using the relationship as a mirror to become more fully ourselves. In Jung's vision, the most profound relationships are those that help us reclaim our wholeness, not by completing us, but by showing us where we're already whole. This transformative power explains why some relationships that end aren't failures, but complete successes. They served their purpose in facilitating growth, even if that growth ultimately led in different directions. And why some relationships that last do so not out of habit or fear, but because both partners commit to continual rebirth together. The love that emerges from this stage has a timeless quality. It's no longer about what each person can get, but about what the relationship itself can become. In Jung's own words, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. At this stage, we understand that the greatest gift of love isn't finding someone to live with. It's finding someone who helps us become who we're meant to be. Recognizing which stage of love you're currently experiencing can be transformative in itself. In the early throes of infatuation, you might find yourself making excuses for someone's questionable behavior, or feeling an inexplicable certainty that this person is the one, despite barely knowing them. These are telltale signs you're in the projection phase. When the initial magic starts fading and you notice more flaws than virtues, when small irritations spark disproportionate reactions, you've likely entered the disillusionment stage. The shift happens when you stop demanding your partner change and instead focus on understanding them. That's differentiation. And when your relationship consistently pushes you to grow beyond your comfort zone, when conflicts feel like opportunities rather than threats, you've reached the transformation stage. Keeping a journal can help track these emotional shifts. Notice when your feelings about your partner evolve from idealization to acceptance, as this awareness alone can prevent unnecessary heartache. Self-awareness serves as your compass through all these stages, particularly in understanding your projections. Every woman carries unconscious blueprints of what love should look like. Perhaps a knight in shining armor who rescues her, or a perfectly attuned partner who always knows her needs. These fantasies often stem from childhood experiences or cultural conditioning. The moment you notice yourself thinking, if only they would, or they should be more, pause. This is likely your unconscious speaking through projection. Shadows work similarly. When a partner's trait provokes intense irritation, it often points to qualities you've disowned in yourself. The woman who judges her partner's emotional outbursts might be uncomfortable with her own suppressed emotions. The one who fears her partner's criticism might harbor her own harsh inner critic. Regular self-reflection, through therapy, meditation, or honest conversations with trusted friends, helps illuminate these blind spots before they sabotage your relationships. Understanding these stages provides powerful protection against toxic relationships. In the projection phase, love bombing and intense chemistry can mask red flags, but knowing this stage is temporary helps maintain perspective. When someone seems too perfect, they likely are. You're seeing your own fantasy, not the real person. During disillusionment, toxic partners often escalate control or manipulation, counting on your emotional investment to keep you trapped. Recognizing this stage's purpose, to move beyond fantasy, helps distinguish normal growing pains from genuine danger signs. Differentiation protects you further by clarifying your boundaries and needs. A woman grounded in this stage won't tolerate disrespect because she no longer confuses love with possession or obsession. She understands that real love shouldn't require her to shrink, betray herself, or endure constant chaos. The transformation stage reveals the ultimate test. Does this relationship inspire you to become your best self, or does it keep you cycling through old wounds? This brings us to the most crucial takeaway. The work of love begins within, long before you meet a partner. Jung emphasized that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we'll call it fate. Many women spend years chasing love externally, not realizing they're repeating patterns established in childhood. The daughter of an absent father keeps choosing emotionally unavailable partners. The woman who learned to equate love with sacrifice finds herself in lopsided relationships. Breaking these cycles requires inner work, identifying your attachment style, healing past traumas, and developing a secure relationship with yourself. Practices like mindfulness, therapy, and creative expression help integrate your shadows so you stop projecting them onto partners. When you approach dating from this grounded place, you naturally attract healthier connections because you're no longer seeking someone to complete you, you're seeking someone to complement your wholeness. The journey through these stages isn't linear. You might revisit earlier phases during life transitions or new relationship challenges. What matters is developing the tools to navigate them consciously. Keep asking yourself, is this relationship allowing me to grow? Am I loving from my whole self or just my fantasies? Remember that the healthiest love won't always feel exciting in the way early infatuation does, but it will feel deeply right, like coming home to yourself while being seen by another. That's the paradox Jung reveals. The love that transforms us isn't found in another person, but in the selves we discover through the courage to love authentically. When you prioritize this inner work, you rewrite your love story from one of seeking salvation to one of mutual evolution, and that makes all the difference.